Alright, we've made it to the moment screen of step 2. So, as you can see, we've got 10 more moments ahead of us. I have my number generator ready to go. The only thing that I'm keeping in mind is it's been recommended to me that I do escapade before road trip, because you get something in this episode that comes along in road trip. So if if 5 gets chosen before 9, I'll have to do a re-roll, but otherwise it's all up to the number generator. So let's see which one we get first. 5? You gotta be kidding me. As I was just explaining, anything but 5. You can do 9 first and then we'll do 5. Alright, try that again. Okay, we have 10. We're doing 10 first. That's too funny. Okay, we're going to a soiree, everybody. You'd whiled away the morning, doing whatever struck your fancy, and now you were recharging with lunch. With nothing on the horizon, you were free to spend as much or as little time on your plate as you wanted. It was while you were thinking on all the possibilities for your afternoon that your moms approached you.
Hi.
Hi there.
You okay?
Mouthful, you nodded in reply. To your surprise, they both sat with you at the table. Based on the time, you had wondered if they were joining you for a meal, but neither of them brought anything.
All right. Great. We wanted to have a little chat with you.
The qualifier little did nothing to downplay the situation. Yes? Your chewing slowed as your eyes widened, looking from one parent to the other. Anything that required both of them to talk to you must be something big. Yeah, I'd be a little unsettled, I think. You didn't like being the only one not knowing what was going on. Stomach churning, you waited for them to fill you in.
There. Aw, don't look so worried. It's nothing scary. Promise. There's a soiree at the Cypress tomorrow night. Your ma and I are going.
The Cypress was the country club your moms were part of and where Elizabeth played golf. It seemed like every other month they had some event or another, all with fancy names like soiree. Chewing your lip, you wondered what this had to do with you. Mom chuckled at your poorly concealed reaction. Leaning in, Ma took your hand and squeezed it.
We've decided to make the night a bit special. Elizabeth's going to be allowed to stay home fully alone for the first time.
Sorry.
You'll still be coming to the party with us. It's Elizabeth's night to party with no family around, not yours. Sorry, you've got to wait a couple more years.
I mean, I would be disappointed. Not gonna lie. Be like, but I mean, I'm the little sibling in this case, but still, I'd be like, but. Crossing your arms over your chest, you leaned back in your seat. So much for the big talk. This was all about Elizabeth.
Don't worry, we're not done yet. There's something in this for you.
You were not yet convinced, but you gave your moms the benefit of the doubt and listened. Your parents shared a look across the table. You cleared your throat, reminding them that you were waiting. They couldn't keep dropping such hints and then turn coy when the conversation was about to get good.
Well,
since it's a pretty fancy party, that's still chaperoned, and attendees are allowed to bring a guest, we thought it might be a nice opportunity for you to invite someone yourself as a date, if you want.
Ah, I see what you guys are up to. Your eyes widened as the words sunk in. Your moms, accustomed to your quietness, continued.
Even though we'll be at the party too, you don't need to worry about us getting in your way. You'll be free to eat, dance, and enjoy the music as you see fit. But no leaving the property.
Ma nodded at Mom's interjection.
isn't that great?
Yes, as long as you don't leave the party. And if you'd rather bring just a friend, that's a-okay too.
I mean, I'd be excited and also terrified. Like, would I have the gumption at 13? I don't think I would. I don't know if I would have. I'm gonna go this one. Your parents were smiling at you, clearly expecting a response, but you were still too shocked to formulate anything of the kind. You hadn't imagined this was where the talk was going.
Don't worry about it.
The soiree isn't until tomorrow, so you've got time. Just let us know your plans before we're heading out. And that's all. We'll leave you to your lunch now.
Your moms rose from their chairs in unison, disappearing to another part of the house. You barely noticed their departure. All you could think of was what had just happened. The remnants of your lunch stared up at you from your plate. Yep. The last thing on your mind was food. You rose from the table and cleared your plate as you tried to untangle the thoughts in your head. Even though you'd relocated to your bedroom, your head was stuck on the conversation that had unfolded at the dining table downstairs. You knew that... I mean, deep down, I knew that I wanted it to be a date. Of course, I wanted that. The prospect of having your first date made it impossible to sit still. You couldn't help but jiggle your foot as you laid on your bed, contemplating the possibility. That night being a date would mean actually asking someone out. The little you knew of that came from what you'd seen on TV and movies and what you'd heard about from kids at school. Your moms hadn't even entertained the idea of you dating until now. Yeah, and in my family, there's no way Jose would have been at 13. No way! You went over possible words and phrases in your head, setting up scenarios and smooth segues before tearing them down and trying something else. I mean, obviously. Obviously, there can be only one that I would be picturing. Would I... Yeah, I would have let myself daydream. I don't know if I would go through with it, though. I definitely would have let myself daydream. Yep. You let your train of thought continue a little longer. You clearly pictured his eyes, the way he rubbed his arm when he was nervous, and tried your best to guess what he might do next. It was nice. You liked him. You knew you were supposed to be friends, but you just... liked him. A lot. You wouldn't be able to stop thinking of him even if you wanted to, and you didn't. Sighing, you shifted position on the bed, resting your arms on the windowsill. A flock of birds caught your eye and led your gaze as they crossed the sky. You watched the birds grow smaller and less distinct until they disappeared from sight. Like the snap of a hypnotist's fingers, you were released from the trance and left with a goal of your own. You were going to go take a walk. You ambled through the familiar streets of your neighborhood, picking your path at whim. It was as quiet as ever, with tourists choosing to congregate in the shopping area near the beach rather than venture into the sleepy residential zones. You continued down the road and soon found yourself at the shore. The fresh, salty air hit you first, rolling to meet you over the grassy dunes that tickled your legs, followed by the familiar view of the sea stretching out across the horizon. You came to a halt. A lone figure was standing in the ocean, the water reaching up to his knees. Though he had his back to you, you recognized the familiar silhouette as Cove's. It made sense that you'd find him here. He always was in his element by the sea. You had no idea if he heard your arrival or if it was a coincidence, but he looked over his shoulder. Your eyes met. I would have either waved or nervously headed closer. I'll do a wave, why not? Heart pounding, you thrust your arm in the air and waved for Cove's attention. Cove smiled at you, bathed in the soft light of the afternoon sun. With his hair gently tousled by the sea breeze, he looked especially charming. He then fully turned around and began to wade through the water over to the shore. You wanted him to get to you already. You could hardly wait to talk about this. You hoped he took his time to come over. You were nervous about this. You relaxed after running into him. You were alright with all this. Nervousness, yes. Instead of standing at the shore, you felt like you were on the edge of a cliff. The question of whether to invite him, and if so, in what fashion, was in front of you. Between leaping into a world unknown or enjoying the safety of the familiar.
Molly.
Hi! How's it going, man? Good to see you.
Hey, are you free right now?
Not exactly. My moms are taking me to a soiree tomorrow. At the country club. You winced at your abrupt transition to the topic and hoped that Cove wouldn't mind. He'd been known to dive into new and unconnected topics in the middle of a conversation, after all. This is true.
Soiree, huh? Sounds exciting?
He was smiling politely, but you could tell that your outing mention hadn't sparked much interest. Your heart, which had lodged itself somewhere in your throat when you'd spotted him, dropped. You stared at him, weighing your options. Cove tilted his head curiously as you fumbled with what to say next. Who better to invite on your first real date than Cove, the only person who could make you giddy with just a smile? But you were afraid he'd think it was boring, or worse, wouldn't want to go with you as a date. But I want him to come. But I'm plain as me, and I wouldn't have had the courage. Well... It all depends. I guess, like, if this was me, if I had told my parents that I was planning on this, I'd feel, like, compelled to go through with it. But I haven't in this context, but I feel like my moms already know who I would have asked, and will be surprised if I don't. Okay, it's either this or this. And I don't know. I'm sorry, Cove, I'm making you blink at me for ages. Alright, you know what? I'm gonna leave it up to the fate of the coin. The coin will decide my fate. Heads, it's a date. Tails, I'm turning tail and I'm not asking him to come with me. Hiya! Ah, tails! My cowardly self won out. Alright. Well, we'll see. You know what? I'm actually gonna make a save. Because I do want to see what the soiree is like with Cove there, but I do also have to play true to myself, so we'll see. We'll see what happens with this. Cove would be happier splashing in the sea than eating dainty hors d'oeuvres with your mom's country club friends. Yeah, Elizabeth's staying home. I'm going alone with my mom's.
Oh.
A beat passed with him just looking on. Oh, you asked the most perfect question. I love you.
Can I come?
Immediately after speaking the words, his eyebrows shot up, almost as if he was surprised at himself. But the shock was mutual. You hadn't thought he'd invite himself along. You want to be with me?
That's,
if that's okay. Sorry if it's a party only for members of the club.
I think at this point, when I got swept away, I mean, yes, he's definitely coming. I had a tendency to get too excited at this age and kind of blurt stuff out that I shouldn't have. I probably would have done this because I would have just been so excited.
Molly?
Would you go to the party with me as a practice date? Let's see. It's either really fast. Actually, I like the way this is worded. This probably would be more true to me. My parents said it would be alright if I brought a date, and you danced around the unspoken question, hoping that Cove would catch your drift. Caught off guard, he lifted his hands in front of his chest out of surprise. Then he packed them down in a cross over his chest. He twisted his face to the side, no longer able to meet your eyes. He still couldn't hide the flush on his cheeks.
Oh my god.
Oh my god! I'm blushing over here.
Are you serious?
You nodded, nodding your fingers together anxiously. His lips were pressed tightly together, preventing any more words from slipping out. You could tell that he was nervous, but that was always easy to pick up on with him. After another moment, he inclined his head, dipping it in a nod so slight that you might have missed it had you been able to tear your eyes from him. You're welcome! Yeah, I would have been in disbelief. Really? Cove closed his eyes, trapped in his awkward pose. He was gripping his arms so tightly that the skin around his knuckles was fully taut. Cove's lingering tension made it impossible for you to relax completely. Cove exhaled at last, letting out a sigh that stretched into another tense silence. His stance loosened. His arms stayed crossed over his chest, but he was no longer clutching them like a shield. You didn't want to be the one to break the quiet.
Thanks, Molly. I guess I'm gonna have to tell my dad and mom, too.
Right. I've gotta let my moms know you're going. Can you come with me?
Yeah.
It was a relief that he'd thought enough to manage speech again. You hoped that by the time he got to your house, he'd be able to manage full sentences once more. What about me? Cove went to where he discarded his things in the sand, tucking a shirt over his head and slipping on a pair of shoes before joining you and setting off home. The two of you stepped inside the front door of your house. It was an action you'd taken together countless times, but your stomach had never churned quite like this on previous occasions. At the sound of the door opening, your mom poked her head into the hall.
Hello.
Ah, Cove, it's you. What a surprise.
She chuckled at her own joke. Cove was always there, and she knew how close the two of you were. Bringing anyone other than him back would have been an actual surprise.
Hi, Mrs. Waverider. It's nice to see you. So I take it Cove's going to be our guest for tomorrow night?
You nodded your head vigorously, beaming at your mom.
Well...
And what kind of outing will it be?
Her voice was hesitant, but serious. Cove ducked his head down reflexively. You knew that he figured out what she was driving at. It's a date. Mom nodded in understanding. She wore a wispy smile.
Ma is gonna be thrilled about this.
I can only imagine. Cove tilted his head back up just slightly. He peeked through the longer strands of his hair. Oh, smart question, I like.
Just her, Mrs. Waverider?
Even if you'd not been able to see his wide, worried eyes, you'd have heard the anxiety in his voice. Your mom sighed and patted him on the arm.
Oh, Cove. You're a great kid. Most parents hope that their kid meets such a special person someday.
She glanced aside, a wry expression on her face.
Someday is the real key word there.
What's with the evil smile, Mom? She turned back to you both.
But you just had to move in right across the street at 8 years old.
Mom crouched down, shaking her head and put a hand on each of Cove's shoulders.
Okay.
Oh, my goodness. We're not getting married. This is our first date. Relax. I mean, not yet, but you know what I mean.
Cove, I hope you're planning on being very good to Molly. And I'm not just talking about tomorrow night.
She nudged him playfully on the cheek with a fist. Cove, who had been blushing when all this began, was now as red as an heirloom tomato.
Okay. Yeah. I was, or will.
Yeah, this would have been it. Stop embarrassing me! You covered your eyes with your hands, wishing it had been Ma down here when you'd come home. Then again, Ma would have been just as embarrassing, but in a different way. She might even have cried. He didn't speak further, his eyes locked down on his shuffling feet as he rubbed the scar on his arm. The redness remained intact.
Okay, I've put Cove through the ringer enough. The big day isn't even here yet.
You wondered if that meant she intended to give a repeat of this performance tomorrow. You were afraid to find out.
I'll give your folks a call and get everything squared away.
She headed off to get the phone, leaving the two of you alone. Cove's eyes darted to you, and he shot you a quick, delicate smile before staring at the ground again.
I'm gonna go across the street. Talk to my parents.
Bye, Cove. I'm surprised we didn't get the option to, go with him for that, because he came with us. But okay, you saw him off with a wave. He retreated from your home's entryway without another word. And the rest of the afternoon passed by just like that. Back in your room, your mind was alight with visions of tomorrow night. The soiree was something, but not nearly as exciting as going on your first date. You were thrilled that Cove had actually said yes, that he was your genuine date to a party. You hugged your knees to your chest, overawed by the thought, the night couldn't come soon enough. And just like that, the evening of the soiree had arrived, the daylight hours having slipped away in a blur. Up in your bedroom, you were getting ready for the big event. That was your intention, at least, but you hadn't settled on an outfit. Oof. Stationed in front of your wardrobe, you scanned over the clothing you had at your disposal. Though Ma had mentioned this event was a bit dressier than a normal get-together, you didn't necessarily have to comply. I want to make another save. I'm gonna do it over this. Yes. Because I would have been thinking about what will he like to see me in? But other than that, I would have done formal for sure. You couldn't help but consider how he would respond to the way you were dressed. Would he like seeing you dressed all fancy, or would it reinforce the weirdness of the situation? Your mind drifted across the street. Was Cove going through these same steps right now, staring at his wardrobe and trying to decide what to wear? You had no idea if he would dress up for the occasion himself, or if he'd wear his usual attire. It would be so much easier if you knew what he was going to do. Didn't want to look stupid, wanted to impress, didn't want to come across as too excited, didn't want to look like you were taking this too seriously, wanted him to see you in a new light. Yes to the top two. I'll do this one. I want to impress him. And I'm going to look for something formal. It's a soiree. I'm going formal. I like dressing up when I get the chance. You attempted to decide between the nicer pieces in your wardrobe, the ones that rarely had a chance to come out. You decided to dress formally because... yeah, I honestly like dressing up. I wanted to make Ma happy. I always want to make Ma happy, but I do honestly like dressing up. There was something magical about the sheen of an elegant fabric and the cut of formal wear, something that transformed everyone into a more sophisticated version of their normal self. To start, you decided to wear... yes, dress all the way, definitely. The one you picked was light and had sheen. The silky material seemed to glide through your fingers as you took it from the wardrobe. It was a perfect fit for a summer evening party. You began to get dressed, your fingers working stiff zips and awkward fastenings. It felt different against your skin, reminding you with every movement that you were dressed up. Whatever happened tonight, you were pleased that you'd gotten the opportunity to wear this. Now dressed, you gave yourself a final glance over before heading downstairs ready to head out. You found your moms already waiting in the living room. They were putting the finishing touches on their outfits. Ma strapping her heel into a stiletto shoe, and Mom trying to fasten a bracelet single-handed. Ooh! You guys look wonderful! Killing it, both of you. They looked up as you entered.
Oh,
Molly! You look so nice! Don't you think, Pam?
thanks.
Thanks for dressing up, Molly. I hope the party will be prepared for your arrival. You look sharp.
Thank you. Mom was still struggling with the bracelet. You lent a hand, literally, by taking one side and holding it as she secured the clasp.
Thanks, kiddo.
Mom then glanced over at the clock on the wall. Seeing where the hands were pointing, a frown creased her face.
When's Cove going to be here? Do you know?
He's getting here at 7. Soon, probably. I'm not sure. I'm picking him up from his place. I'll go get him. Soon, probably. Mom pursed her lips as she stared at the hands ticking by on the clock.
All right. If he's not here in 5, I'll give his house a call.
Elizabeth flittered down the stairs, her eyes narrowed.
What?
You're still here?
Yes, but not for much longer. Hopefully. Wait, I know you're excited, but we haven't even said goodbye. And I want to go over how things are going to play out.
Elizabeth sighed as Mom began listing the rules, ticking them off on her fingers.
No ordering takeout or other deliveries. You can't have anyone else come over.
Oh, there it is. She nodded, resigned to her fate, listening to a set of rules she could predict without so much as a glance at a crystal ball.
If anything happens, you can call us or go across the street to the Holdens. Keep the noise down. This house might be empty, but there are people all around in the neighborhood. Usual house rules still apply. Don't do anything you wouldn't do if we were here.
All right.
And we'll be back no later than 11:30 p.m. But we'll call if there are any issues, so don't tie up the phone line all night.
Right. All done. Can you go now? Ma strode over and swept Elizabeth up in a hug. Your sister let out a small noise, her eyes widening, and suddenly looked much less like the smug teenager she acted like.
You're such a big girl now. I still can't believe it.
Elizabeth rolled her eyes. This wasn't the quick departure that she'd been hoping for. Any chance of it ending soon vanished as Mom joined in the hug.
Neither can I. It feels like it was only yesterday that...
Elizabeth groaned, trying to cut the reminiscing off without success. You laughed and stayed well clear of the love pile. You felt sorry for your sister. You were glad you weren't the one getting that treatment. You joined in the hug. I would've. Mom and Ma held out their arms to you as you approached, welcoming you into the hug. Be uncomfortable, sister. Elizabeth whined, eager for this to come to an end already.
Jeez.
Can you all just go? Your family disentangled from the hug in time to catch the doorbell ringing.
Ooh, the guest of honor is here.
She raced over to the door. As Ma predicted, Cove had arrived and he was ushered inside. What's he wearing?
Oh, nice.
You look very nice, Cove.
Oh, adorable! I love it. It's dressed up, but like not too dressed up. It's perfect.
Oh, thanks.
He looked around the room, searching for a way out of that conversation before his eyes met yours. That's a great face. If that's the look he has on his face after seeing what I'm dressed in, I've nailed it. Cove pulled his face into a smile. As you reciprocated, the tension in his face faded away. You watched him taking in your outfit, swallowing and grinning at you again.
Hi, Molly.
You fluttered your hand in a clumsy wave.
It's nice.
Thank you. You look nice too.
You look really nice tonight. I'm glad we got to do this. Going to a place dressed up, I mean.
His words took you by surprise, but after the earlier worries about your appearance, they were a welcome balm for your nerves. Indeed. I'm really glad I dressed up. You attempted to control the grin spreading across your face. The small statement had made a big impact. I wish I could say the same to you. Rude. It's either this or the bottom one. Yeah, probably the bottom one. You look wonderful. Cove held his arms tight against his body, shielding himself from such an overt declaration of approval.
Thank you.
Now that Mom had finished reiterating the rules to Elizabeth, who then scurried off to the sanctuary of her room. She came over to greet Cove.
Hi, Cove. Nice to have you along for the ride. Thank you for letting me come.
You're welcome.
It's no trouble. You're always welcome.
Mom's eyebrows rose in twin lines of concern.
Let's all remember that for the foreseeable future we'll be neighbors who have to see each other every day.
Yeah.
Cove looked helplessly at your mom. Luckily, Ma came over and rescued him.
Mom's the cautious sort, sweetie. You don't need to look so worried.
Mom smiled reassuringly. She didn't intend to scare him. Ma laid a hand on her shoulder.
We should get to the car. There's nothing fashionable about being late.
As you made to follow your mom's, Cove held out a hand. Pausing, you waited for an explanation. He wilted under the force of your attention, letting out a long sigh. Ah. Yes, quite.
Both my dad and my mom insisted that, since this is a...
He paused, pushing the hair back from his burning face, and forced himself to continue.
It's a date, and kind of a fancy party. I needed to bring something. For you, for inviting me.
The conclusion of the story caught you by surprise. You blinked, unsure if you'd slacked too much on your own preparations for tonight. You got me a present?
That's,
Not really. Just this.
Cove reached behind himself to take something out of a back pocket. His hand returned to view with him holding a single small lily by the stem. He remembered my favorite flower. I'm actually getting teary. That's so sweet. Cove threw his gaze to the floor, shyly inching his hand closer to you. I don't like this flower. It's my favorite. Cove audibly sighed in relief. You got the impression he had been stressing over the flower he chose.
I wasn't positive, though I thought it would be.
You're so wonderful. Yeah, it's either thank you, Cove, or you're so wonderful. Alright, we'll do this one. Thank you, Cove. He muttered a delicate reply.
You're welcome.
Then, you accepted the flower from him. Cove straightened himself out in response.
So, we're gonna be late if we keep standing here.
Right. We better hurry. Looks lovely. You pulled up at the country club. The sun had sunk deep into the horizon, the last of its light sleepily warming the oncoming night. Your moms led the way to the space around the back where the event was being held. The place had been transformed through decoration, with smart tablecloths and elegant ribbons contributing to a festive atmosphere. Musicians dressed in matching black and white were setting up their instruments and flicking through pages of sheet music. And, as promised, there was a table covered in plates of carefully prepared food. Destination reached, your parents rounded on you and Cove.
Things haven't kicked off yet, but don't let that stop you from enjoying yourselves.
Have fun.
We'll be around if you need us.
See you later.
Bye! Cove waved your moms off. Once they'd retreated a distance away, you found him watching you expectantly.
What now?
It wasn't a question, but a plea for help. You could tell that he definitely didn't know what to do with himself in this situation. We'll have to wait for some things to start, like the band, but there's stuff going on already. Cove perked up at that.
Really?
Oh? Do you want to do any of those? Whatever they are?
I would definitely check the snacks. We can go eat some food now, even if the music hasn't started yet.
Oh?
That's okay. It's not too soon.
I only like these parties because of the free food. I knew you'd come just for the free food. This one. Yep, I wonder what they'll have this time.
Let's go find out.
The two of you wandered over to the refreshment table. With it being early in the night, it had barely been touched, and the plates were nearly as pristine as when they'd left the kitchens. The offerings were all tiny and bite-sized, ready to be picked up and sampled. It was immediately apparent that there was plenty to choose from. Just from the level of care with which it was presented, it was clear that this was fancy stuff. Cove stared at one plate, then another, confused.
Maybe?
I think I know some of this.
Gross. I was still, fairly picky at 13. And only some of it is any good. You examine the table like a detective at a crime scene. That one is so sour your tongue will shrivel up. That looks like chocolate, and it is mostly
What else is it?
nasty. Cove's eyes were wide as you guided him through what was on offer. It made you feel sophisticated. Cove squared his shoulders as if gearing up for a match. His stance was familiar from all the times you'd seen him preparing for some sporting event.
I'm gonna try it.
Ooh. How brave. He picked up a plate and took one appetizer, then another. And another. Soon you realized he was taking one of every single type. You gestured at his mounting plate of food. Why?
Why not?
Yeah, I would have wanted to impress him and be like, I'm not so picky, really, honestly. Yeah, I'll join him. You might be stuffed afterwards, but that was a problem for your future self. Right now, you are going to enjoy the feast to the full. Cove nibbled his way through everything the Cypress had. The results of his endeavor were mixed. He was revolted by some of the things he tried, openly screwing up his face and rushing to find a drink to wash the taste away. Yet, these bad experiences didn't stop him from plowing on, moving on to the next snack with an open mind. There were some foods he was neutral about, dismissing them with a shrug, but best of all were his reactions when he stumbled across something good. Each time caught him by surprise, his expression morphing from wary curiosity to skeptical interest before making way for astonished enjoyment. He's come a long way since he was a kid, when he was like, Hawaiian chicken? I don't know any of these things and I don't want to eat it. Now he's trying everything. It's pretty cool. Regardless of how he felt about what he was currently eating, you could tell he was having a good time, just being free to eat whatever he laid his eyes on. You thought that was nice too. After going through a round of sampling, what's moving on to something else? Is that just relaxing? Yeah, sure. We should pick out a table.
Okay.
You found a place to sit at the edge of the party area where it was quieter with fewer people bustling around. You pulled out a chair and sat down. Cove, already seated, was stretching.
These clothes are kind of uncomfortable.
He flexed an arm at the elbow, frowning, before twisting it back behind him. Yeah?
Aww.
My arms can't move the same as normal, like I'm gonna rip it if I do anything.
I think it suits you.
Really? Okay, thanks.
He toyed with one cuff of his shirt, wedging a finger between the fabric and his skin. Watching him struggling against his clothes, you thought back to how apprehensive you'd been about selecting your outfit. Yeah, I probably would have overshared. I had a really hard time choosing what I was gonna wear.
You did? I can't see you looking bad no matter what. But I know what you mean.
Dang. Whew. Cove breezed past the high praise he had casually given and looked forlornly down at his outfit.
I felt really weird doing something for this too. Did your mom tell you what to wear?
You shook your head.
That's nice.
He settled down in his seat just a bit. Now that you had a spot of your own... Yep. Stay chatting with Cove. There's no way I'm going up to other people to be like, this is Cove. Wouldn't have happened. In no time at all, the sun set in full, the lights faded in, and the opening notes of the band's first song rang out. You and Cove stopped what you were doing, turning to contemplate the party that had been steadily unfurling while you were distracted. It was much busier now, both in terms of people and activity. The first steps were taken onto the dance floor, some tentative, others eager, and even if the band hadn't been playing, the constant level of chatter would have ensured that it wasn't a quiet night. With the party now in full swing, your options had increased. I probably would have watched the band perform for a little bit first. You and Cove had found a spot to the side of the simple stage that had been set up for the soiree. There you were tucked out of the way of the dance floor while still enjoying an excellent view of the band. You'd gotten there in time— Excuse me, hello. You'd gotten there in time to watch them from the start of the song, their expressions solemn as they teased notes from the strings of their instruments. Cove was entranced, nodding his head along with the music. Catching you watching him, he smiled sheepishly.
Not bad.
It's cool.
I love music. You beamed at Cove, nodding seriously. The music was beautiful. What would I have done? Yeah, I think I probably would have asked his thoughts on it. Your eyes drifted back to Cove. What do you like about this music?
I don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of hard to believe people are making this music by performing on an instrument. How does it just work like that? How does it all come together?
The band began to play their next song. Cove was enraptured once more, his head tilted curiously as he watched the musicians wield their instruments. During a particularly beautiful solo, he even closed his eyes, focusing on nothing but the music. But after a couple of songs, it was decided that you'd watched the band enough. Yeah, I'd look to cut. I don't know if I would have had enough gumption to ask him to dance. I would want to dance really badly, but I don't know if I would have had the gumption. You focused over Cove, wondering how he was finding the evening. He sighed. It was so quiet and unobtrusive that you wouldn't have caught it if you hadn't been watching him. His gaze was roaming. With how far away his eyes seemed, whatever he was searching for couldn't be found at this party. He turned to face you before you could say anything.
I want to sit down.
We can do that. Cove began to move and you instinctively followed him. Yet, instead of taking a seat at one of the many free tables as you'd expected, Cove ignored them as he purposely strode out of the party area. Uh-oh. Cove? Your call didn't seem to register with him as he continued forward, out onto the greens of the golf course. You went after him, trying to watch out for the uneven ground underfoot. The clods of earth dislodging in games of golf were perfect for snatching unwary feet, even in daylight. Up ahead, Cove didn't appear to have had any difficulty traversing the uneven land. Aw, hey. What's up, buddy? He settled down on one of the little hills of the golf course. You joined him, still unsure over what was going on. Why'd you drag us out here? What's wrong? Cove started, as if he'd acted on instinct and your question had brought him around to reality again.
Sorry.
Oh, and it's okay. You can go back to the party.
You didn't budge from your spot. From here, the party was just a glowing haze in the distance. Yeah, didn't want to leave him behind. You shook your head. I don't want to go without you, and not unless you want to.
Oh, thanks.
Now that Cove was more at ease, you tried to find out what had caused him to take flight in the first place. Even thinking the words pained you, but you had to know the answer. Did going to the party with me make you uncomfortable? Logically, you knew that the issue was likely the activity rather than your company. Your heart strained with the worry that you had been at fault, though.
What?
No!
He shook his head emphatically.
It's not anything I did tonight. It's definitely not anything you did either.
Relief overcame you. You'd suspected as much, but with this being your very first date, it was hard to be sure. Cove attempted to fill in the gaps of understanding.
I don't want to think about going back into the party. I just feel ready to go home.
To your home planet? Would have been either this or this. Because I would have been disappointed, honestly. Like, I would understand, but I still feel, I don't know, guilty, I guess, that I brought him into this. I'm gonna flip a coin, because I honestly don't know which one of these I would do. Heads for keeping quiet, tails for I'm sorry. Yeah. Heads. Okay. Keeping quiet this time. Cove stared into the distance. You figured anything you said wouldn't have reached him regardless. Cove sat there quietly, gazing out into the shadowy hills and valleys of the golf course. A comfortably warm wind rustled between you, tussling his hair. It was so far away from the hubbub of the party, you could even make out the quiet sound of crickets chirping.
This is kind of like how we first met. Do you remember?
I was just thinking about that. How it's nighttime, the way you're sitting is very reminiscent of when we met when we were kids. Of course I do. You'd liked him from that very first day.
It's so weird. That was a long time ago now.
You thought back to the day when Cove first arrived in the neighborhood. He had run away from Mr. Holden, taking solace in the hills behind your house. That had been late, too, on a clear night like today. Looking at the sky, you wondered if the stars that were looking down were the same ones as then. Cove's face was brighter, though you could still see signs of the strain that had caused him to depart from the soiree. When he'd first sat down, he had curled up like a pill bug, hunched over, knees pressed to his chest and arms wrapped around them. He'd unwound as you'd been talking, straightening up, his hands free to gesticulate. It was as though the two of you had constructed your own little world away from everything else, and he was beginning to perk up. The small smile that had crept onto his face was quickly ushered away by a frown. Yeah?
I can't believe I'm on a date.
Cove followed up on the statement before you could react. He spoke in a distinctly whispered tone, as though you were the only one in the world who he could share these words with.
After I said I wanted to come, I wanted to take it back. Not because I really didn't want to do it, because... I don't know. It seemed like a big deal. It made me feel... bad, somehow. I started feeling like I couldn't do it, even though I just wanted to do it. I guess it was sort of like having to give a presentation in front of the class. Even though it was just me and you doing something, like we always do.
He charged on, his words streaming out.
I still could do it because thinking about not being there and you and what you might think if I did take it back made me feel way worse than whatever else I felt.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Molly. I'm sorry I can't just deal with stuff like this and have to make everything so... complicated.
Oh man, so many good options. It's not this one for sure. I think I'm torn between this one and this one. I'm gonna flip a coin again. Heads for I'm sorry, tails, you didn't have to come. Hiya. Tails. Okay. You didn't have to come. You could have told me. After all of this, he had just been feeling bad. Why did he put the both of you through this? Why couldn't he have said something sooner?
I wanted to come. I'm not wishing I stayed home or that this party never came up.
It didn't sound like that. You wanted to take it back. He moved his head to look you straight on, eyes meeting yours.
No way.
Yeah, I did. But it's not 'cause I hate parties, or 'cause I hate you. I never could. It's just... me. There's lots of stuff I want to feel okay doing, and I just don't. I can't explain why. I don't even know why. The problem isn't that somebody is trying to include me. You're the one who doesn't have to keep doing things.
I'm sorry.
I'm like this. I always am. And then I make you feel bad. Nobody is gonna force you to keep trying. But if you do, then I'm gonna keep trying too. When there's something I want to do and I start to feel bad for some reason, I don't want to give up to that and run away. Especially if it's for you.
Aww. He flushed and had to break the fragile eye contact made.
I mean...
Because, I want to keep doing things with you, no matter what. I don't want you to stop wanting me there. Because when I do whatever it is for real and you're with me, it all feels better in the end. It always does.
Molly.
So, thanks for letting me come, Molly. It was something really special.
You are pretty lucky to have me. Yeah, top one. Thanks for coming, and for telling me all that. I'd want to hold his hand and give him, like, some reassurance. Yeah, I don't think I'd have the confidence to take his hand, but I probably would be able to put a hand on his shoulder. As you squeezed it, a smile flickered back onto Cove's face. Cove stood up without warning. The sudden change broke the quiet reverie that had fallen over you. It was such a Cove thing to do. You got up to stand beside him. Hey! What's up? Cove smiled awkwardly, brushing some grass off the side of his pants.
Wanna dance with me?
Aww! Yes, of course! I was sad because I was like, oh, I didn't get a chance to ask him to dance, but he asked me instead. Thank you. What? Why?
It's a dance party, right? And I think...
He trailed off, brow furrowed as if he was trying to figure out the answer himself. Nodding slowly, he continued.
I think... I want to dance with you before it's over.
With the only words he had to explain gone, he just held up his hand to you. His expression was soft. No thanks. I want to dance with you too. Then you reached for his hand and took it in yours. Cove bit his lip as your fingers entwined together, his cheeks reddening. You returned, hand in hand. With the party reaching the end of a long evening, dancing couples had become scarce. One pair among many were hard to notice, but now the space around you would act as a spotlight. Not that there were many left to watch you. He was still at ease, even buoyed by the dissipated crowd. There was a spring in his step as you walked onto the dance floor together. Cove kept hold of the hand you had given him back on the little hill. He raised the other on your shoulder. Rested the other, rather. Cove hesitated while you waited for a sign. With the song in progress before you'd stepped out to dance, there was no signal for the right moment to begin. The same thought occurred to Cove, who shrugged his shoulders with keeping form. Taking that as your starting point, you cautiously began to sway. Cove readily followed your example. You danced wordlessly, dimly aware of the music guiding you. You were more focused on Cove, whose attention was firmly fastened on you. He didn't look down or away once, not even when your knees knocked against each other and you both briefly fumbled your steps. Instead, he chuckled, and it was as soft as the roll of the morning tide. His lips curved into a shy crescent. You had been drifting into a dreamlike state, but that expression, one that you'd never seen before, pinned you back to reality. Your heart was caught in a clinch, held tight and yet straining with the effort of thumping harder than it had after any amount of physical exertion. I cannot read. As if in response, his hand began to hold yours with increased strength. He pulled you ever so slightly more towards him. Thoughts about what it meant or what might happen when it was over eased, and the both of you were able to simply have this dance. Time fell away as you took in this small moment. All too soon, the song reached its conclusion. You could have continued quite contentedly for some time more. You stilled, one hand of yours in his. Cove showed no sign of moving either. It was hard to let go. Well, you heard your name called out, and that brought the dance truly to an end. You both spun to find Mom yelling for you and Cove. Beside her, Mom was shaking her head. She's like, "It's so romantic, you're ruining a perfect moment."
Sorry.
Sorry? What do you mean?
It's time to go home, Lonnie. I had to get hold of them somehow. What did you want me to do, sneak up on them?
Her chosen method was admittedly better than that. You still winced at how dazed you'd been when she'd announced her arrival. Cove looked so embarrassed that you seriously worried about him fleeing again. This time, you didn't think he'd stop until he was out of the grounds. Despite Cove's reaction to the scene with your moms, to you it had been a perfect ending to the evening. You were so glad you got a chance to dance with Cove before the night was over. And it definitely was over now. You didn't need to say anything to Cove. The two of you marched wordlessly over to your parents, who were still bickering playfully. Standing shoulder to shoulder, your parents surveyed you and Cove. You wondered if they were checking that they were returning Mr. Holden's son in the same state that he'd left the house.
So,
That was quite a night, huh, gang? Wasn't it just?
Cove managed a self-conscious smile.
Yeah.
Ma was smiling too, with an expression so soft it could have cradled a newborn chick. Amazing.
well,
And how was your very first date?
Don't ask me in front of the guy, Ma.
Please don't start on them already. It technically hasn't even ended yet. Fine, fine. Good. Well, we'd better ready ourselves to get back to Elizabeth. If we're lucky, the house might still be standing.
Pam.
Oh, shush. She swatted your mom playfully, laughing at the comment. You cast one last look at the party. You saw people exchanging farewells and suppressing yawns. Most of the faces were happy ones, despite the weariness that was starting to creep in. Cove's head was angled away from you. As you watched, wondering what he was looking at, he came around and met your gaze. It was strange. Though it had only been a few hours of your life, you felt a little older as a result of attending the party. It was like a step away from the world of your childhood, where dressing up is reserved almost exclusively as a form of play, towards something new that you hadn't yet grasped. Turning away from the final moments of the party, you shelved that thought for another time as your moms eagerly led the way back to the car. As you and Cove tailed after them, you felt childlike once more. Wow. Whew, what a way to start! We started off with a freaking date. And a dance, and a hand-holding, and the lilies, and everything was just so perfect. Man, Cove was much more articulate than I was at 13 for expressing, like, how he was feeling and his thought process and everything. Like, man. I don't think I would have been able to put those feelings into words at that age, so color me impressed. Anyway, I guess we're only gonna get one moment in today because that was a hell of a moment. Guess we'll see what happens next time.